I realized that I began the last video and sometimes I forget, I lose my train of thought. I often talk about how I'm a choo-choo train. I'm a little bit slow. Has a little bit to do with getting kicked in the head as a young man and having some issues learning. I reverse things sometimes, like I'm dyslexic. And so when I was young, I had a tutor. Her name was Mrs. Husong, and she would help me learn how to write. And what she observed is I would gap. There were many gaps in my writing, and so I would forget things. And so over the years, I've had editors that will go in and fix the gaps and try to make my nonsense connect, but it's really not nonsense, really. Because I'm going to entitle this Things Happen for a Reason. And I want to go back to history. Some years ago, there was a facility in this area that was created. It was a very, very successful Christian ministry. Some of you may have heard of it. It was created by Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. And they built their ministry, and then ultimately Jim got in trouble and got thrown in jail. And so we lived right next to that ministry in Fort Mill, and we lived in a house. And Pete came by. Pete was my father-in-law. He passed away, but he came by and he got a newspaper and he circled an ad, and I think he might have thought it was funny because here's this dyslexic retard who doesn't know very much of anything, married to his daughter, and he's gonna get him to get a job. So he circles an ad, and it was the Fort Mill Times. They needed a reporter. So I'm just dumb enough to go ahead and apply for the job, and guess what? I get it. I get the job. So the first thing I did is I decided I was going to meet with local leaders and try to create some stories of inspiration. And one of the first stories, I remember meeting with the Catawba Indian chief. And really the significance of that is we had moved into Fort Mill. We had moved from Kentucky, and I just want to make sure we're authorized. You know, if you're going to be an author, you need to be authorized. And how can you be authorized if you're creeping on somebody else's land? Which, by the way, the Catawba Indians owned the land, and they actually joined our physical forces and fought for the American people so that we would have freedom, and some of them even died in that war. You can do your own history. I don't want to go back to the book of Genesis to get to Revelation, but here's the really interesting facts. Jim Baker bought this house that used to belong to Billy Graham, and he put it on his property, and over the course of years, while he was in jail, it was not very well taken care of because people lost interest, so it was disintegrating, and so the Billy Graham Evangelical Association bought it back. Brick by brick, they brought it over to the library here, owned by the Billy Graham Evangelical Association, and it was restored fully, and it's sitting there as not as an idol, but a monument of the great work that the Grahams have done over the years, and kudos to the Grahams. So what does this have to do with anything that we're going through? Just a little bit, but not a lot. I don't want to make this personal. I want to just keep on this train of thought, and it's about the Grahams. Not graham crackers, but the Grahams. And so what's the deal with that house, and why is it so important? Well, because it was what happened after the event where Jim Baker was in jail. Billy Graham would actually go visit him. And I'm writing a little bit of an article about that right now, but he would actually go in to visit him in jail, and Jim Baker actually wrote that he would actually hug him while he was cleaning the toilets. You know, there's nothing wrong with a janitor. Sometimes janitors are the most influential people in the world. If you're washing and cleaning the toilets in the jail and you're doing a good job doing that, you know, that's significant. In any event, he got out of jail, and he was met by the Grahams, and the Grahams actually restored him. Gave him some money, gave him a house to stay in, gave him some fuel and an automobile, and they did what people do. They loved him back into his now position. And I think about that, and I want to go back to, I was reading in the book of Timothy today, and there's a correlation there in the book of Timothy where Paul was in jail. And Paul met a gentleman and worked through a process of restoration, and so we're getting there, right? As a society, the church right now, as we speak, is being restored. Making America great again is really what the Catawba Indians did when they fought in the war to found our nation. And what does that have to do with anything at all? It has to do with Florida. There's a movie that's being put together called Florida Wild. And in the movie, it is about settling this nation. And it's about the Indians and, the whole thing. And I don't know the whole story because I haven't seen the movie. I only have heard a little bit about it. I actually tried to go to their set that they did in Florida and kind of see that, but probably the most significant thing that I did while I was there is I went into the family restaurant and I started interviewing people that knew something about the people that actually put the movie together. And all they could speak about is the integrity and the laughter and the love and the joy. And that is the season. That's where Sherry and I are deciding to turn our terrible, messy situation with our family into something that is a little bit more edifying, because families all over the world have dysfunction. Let's face it. We've got to move from dysfunctional families to healthy families. And that is really what I did most of my life, is helped a lot of families get healthy and their businesses get healthy. And now we're ending the battle. I'm not fighting. The Lord fights for me. It's on my mantle. There's actually a scripture that says, just shut up. Let the Lord fight for you. Now I'm paraphrasing because I don't think the Bible says shut up. But the idea of, really don't have to talk about it anymore. Focus on your testimony, what God is doing for you now. So here I am with my mulch. I'm mulching the beds, but the Queen has given me a new directive. She said, I want you to put the mulch down at the basin of the lake because it will begin to build up that area, and I want to use it as a foundational element to the stones we're going to put down there. And I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My wife is the most amazing, most loving person that I know. She happens to be on the spectrum and most likely is autistic, certainly ADD, ADHD. Try to do a Bible study with that. Woof. And conflict comes at those levels, but we have conflict to the point of understanding. Have you ever watched a Jewish couple argue? Well, we're Jewish. Well, you're a liar. You're not Jewish. No. When we actually accepted Jesus, who was a Jew, he became our brother. So we have Jewish blood. And so I bless Israel right now, and Canada and the United States and all the countries all over the world that are coming into greater alignment so that we can start building again and start loving our neighbors, loving China. Dear Jesus, we love the Chinese people. God bless them, and I deeply mean that. It's not always just about America. Now, my flag is tattered, so I'll be installing the very flag that was given to me when John Winship died. In his memorial, he wanted everyone to know, John Winship, I died. Sheree and I, we figure that in our memorial, all we want people to know about us is William and Sheree Winship, they lived. They lived an amazing life. So we're going to travel and we're going to share, and it's going to be fun. We're going to start having fun now. Now that we've gotten beyond the dysfunction, we're moving into harmony. And that really is the goal of any good marriage and any good business and any good life and any good country and any good people. I mean, Jesus canceled your sin debt. Isn't that enough? How much more do you want? Tell me what you want. Jesus already gave you everything.